The knife pressed against Marissa Sullivan's ribs through her thin coat, as she stumbled through the howling darkness, each gust of wind threatening to knock her sideways into the mounting snowdrifts that had transformed the Nebraska prairie into an unforgiving white wasteland. Behind her, distant shouts carried on the wind, her brothers' voices twisted with rage and determination as they tracked her through the blizzard that had descended on Wood River with brutal suddenness that February evening in 1882. She had maybe 10 minutes before they found her trail again, maybe less if the wind died down enough for them to spot her footprints in the fresh powder that was rapidly covering everything in sight. Her lungs burned as she pushed forward, the cold air stabbing at her throat with each desperate breath. The main road had disappeared entirely beneath the snow, and she had no idea if she was still heading away from town or if she had turned in circles. All she knew was that stopping meant death, either from the cold or from her brothers, and she was not ready to die at 19 years old just because she had discovered their terrible secret. The abandoned barn materialized out of the white chaos like a ghost, its dark shape barely visible through the curtain of falling snow. Marissa did not hesitate, throwing herself toward it with the last reserves of her strength. The door hung crooked on its hinges, and she squeezed through the gap into darkness that seemed almost warm compared to the bitter wind outside. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely feel them as she pulled the door as closed as it would go, praying the angle would hide any obvious signs of entry. The barn smelled of old hay and abandonment, and somewhere above her, the wind whistled through gaps in the roof. She pressed herself into the corner farthest from the door, behind what remained of a feed trough, and tried to control her breathing enough to listen. The shouts were getting closer. She could make out her oldest brother James's voice, harsh and commanding, directing the others to spread out and search the old homesteads. There were 3 of them out there, 3 grown men with guns and horses, and no conscience about what they planned to do once they found her. Marissa closed her eyes and thought about her mother, dead these past 5 years, and wondered what she would think knowing her sons had become the very criminals she had prayed they would never be. The door rattled suddenly, and Marissa's heart stopped. Someone was outside, pushing against the weathered wood. She pressed herself tighter against the wall, her hand gripping the small knife she had managed to grab before fleeing into the storm. It was pathetic protection against 3 armed men, but it was all she had. The door swung inward with a groan of frozen hinges, and a tall figure stepped inside, bringing a swirl of snow with him. Marissa held her breath, trying to become invisible in the shadows. The figure turned, and she caught a glimpse of a face beneath a snow-covered hat, features she did not recognize. Not one of her brothers, then. Perhaps someone else looking for shelter from the storm. Perhaps someone who would turn her in the moment he discovered her presence. The man moved deeper into the barn, and she heard the sound of him stomping snow from his boots. He was maybe 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered beneath a heavy coat, and he moved with a deliberate carefulness that spoke of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. A gun belt hung at his hip, the revolver secured in its holster. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, she could see he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps in his mid-20s, with dark hair visible beneath his hat, and a jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. He turned his head suddenly, looking directly at her hiding spot, and Marissa realized her breathing had given her away. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady and surprisingly gentle for a man who looked as hard as the Nebraska winter itself. "Madam, I am not going to hurt you." She did not respond, could not have even if she wanted to, her throat tight with fear and cold and exhaustion. He took a slow step closer, his hands deliberately visible and empty. I heard men shouting out in the storm. Heard them calling for someone named Marissa. That you? Still she said nothing, but something in her face must have confirmed it because he nodded slowly. They sounded mighty angry. Figure you have good reason to be hiding from them. He paused, listening to the wind howl outside. How many are there? 3, she whispered finally, her voice cracking. My brothers. His expression did not change, but she saw something shift in his eyes, a hardening that suggested he understood exactly what kind of situation would drive a woman out into a killing blizzard to escape her own family. They are close, she added. They will find this barn soon. He looked around the space, assessing it with quick efficiency, then back at her. When he spoke again, there was absolute certainty in his voice. They won't find you. Before she could respond, he moved toward her with startling speed, shrugging out of his heavy coat. Put this on. You are half frozen. He draped it over her shoulders, and the warmth of it was so shocking she almost cried. There is a root cellar in the floor over there, saw it when I came in. You get down there and stay quiet no matter what you hear. Understand? What about you? The question came out before she could stop it. The corner of his mouth lifted in something that was not quite a smile. I am just a cowboy looking for shelter from the storm. Nothing suspicious about that. He helped her to her feet, and she realized how badly she was shaking. Come on, quick now. The root cellar was accessible through a trapdoor hidden beneath scattered hay, the space below it narrow and dark and smelling of earth. Marissa looked at it with rising dread, but the sound of approaching voices outside cut through her hesitation. The stranger helped her down into the hole, and she found herself in a space barely large enough to crouch in, cold dirt walls pressing close on all sides. I will get you out soon as they are gone, he said quietly, his face visible above her in the dim light. Stay quiet. Then the trapdoor closed, and she heard the sound of hay being scattered over it. Darkness swallowed her completely, and she pressed her hand over her mouth to muffle the sound of her breathing. Above her, the barn door crashed open again, and James's voice filled the space. Anyone in here? Just me. The stranger's voice was calm, unconcerned. Who is asking? We are looking for someone. A girl, dark hair, about 19. You seen anyone out in this storm? Have not seen anyone but you fellows. Been in here maybe 20 minutes trying to warm up enough to make it back to town. You mind if we look around? That was her middle brother Thomas, his voice tight with suspicion. Help yourself. Not much to see. Marissa listened to the sound of boots moving around the barn, her brothers searching through the scattered remnants of old equipment and rotted hay. She was so cold she could not feel her feet anymore, and her shoulders were cramping from the awkward position, but she did not dare move even an inch. Someone walked directly over the trapdoor, and she bit down on her hand to keep from making any sound. What is your name, Cowboy? James asked, his tone aggressive. Owen Zimmerman. Work on the Connolly Ranch about 15 miles south of here. Long way to be out in a storm like this. Was not planning on the storm. Was heading to Wood River on an errand for my boss when it hit. Barely made it to this barn before I lost sight of everything. There was a long pause, and Marissa imagined her brother studying this stranger, trying to decide if he was telling the truth. James had always been able to smell a lie, which was ironic given how many he told himself. This girl we are looking for, she is our sister, James said finally. Sick in the head, runs off sometimes, does not know what she is doing. We are worried she is going to freeze to death out here. That's so. Owen's voice remained neutral, giving nothing away. If you do see her, you bring her straight to the Sullivan place just outside town. There will be a reward in it for you. I will keep that in mind. More footsteps, more searching, and then finally her youngest brother Michael spoke up. She is not here, James. Maybe she made it further than we thought. Maybe. James did not sound convinced. Or maybe she is already dead in a snowbank somewhere. The casual cruelty of it made Marissa squeeze her eyes shut. These were the boys she had grown up with, who had taught her to ride and shoot and rope cattle. She did not know these men who would speak of her death with such indifference. "We are wasting time here," Thomas said. "Storm is getting worse. We should check the old Miller place before we lose visibility completely." "Fine, but we are coming back if we do not find her elsewhere." James raised his voice slightly. "You hear that, Marissa? We will be back, and when we find you, you are going to wish you had just kept your mouth shut about things that were not your business." The threat hung in the air for a moment, and then she heard the sound of them leaving, the barn door slamming shut behind them. She waited, not daring to hope, counting her heartbeats in the darkness. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the trapdoor opened and Owen's face appeared above her. "They are gone." Saw them heading east from the door. He reached down and pulled her up out of the cellar, and her legs nearly buckled when she tried to stand. He caught her easily, steadying her with firm hands. "Easy now. You have been down there in the cold, need to get your blood moving again." "Thank you." It seemed inadequate for what he had just done, but it was all she could manage. "What did you see?" he asked quietly, his eyes searching her face. "What do they want to kill you for?" She hesitated, but something in his expression told her she could trust this stranger who had already saved her life once. "I found stolen cattle on our property, cattle with brands that had been altered. When I confronted James about it, he told me I had better forget what I saw if I knew what was good for me. But I could not forget. Those brands belonged to the Connolly Ranch." Owen's jaw tightened. "The Connolly Ranch is where I work. We have been missing cattle for months now. Over 100 head. They have them scattered across different locations. I heard James and Thomas talking about it, planning the next sale. I was going to go to the sheriff, but Michael saw me packing a bag and figured out what I was planning. They came after me and I ran." She wrapped his coat tighter around herself, though she was still shaking. "They will kill me. James said as much when he caught me in the barn back home. I only got away because the storm hit and I managed to slip out while they were saddling horses." Owen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Outside, the wind continued its relentless assault on the old building. "Storm like this, it will be dark soon. Maybe another hour of daylight at most, and that is being generous. Your brothers will have to find shelter themselves or risk freezing. We are stuck here until morning at the earliest. They will come back. Maybe, but I will be here and I am not going to let them take you." He said it with such simple conviction that she almost believed him. "You need to get warmer. There is not much in here, but we can make do." He set about gathering the driest hay he could find, piling it in the corner farthest from the door where the wind did not cut through as sharply. Marissa watched him work, this stranger who had risked himself for her without hesitation. He had an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, no wasted effort, everything purposeful. "Why did you help me?" she asked. He paused, considering the question. "My sister ran away from home when she was 16, had her reasons, though she never told me all of them. I helped her get on a train east, gave her what money I had. Have not seen her in 5 years, but I know she is alive and safe because she writes sometimes." He went back to arranging the hay. "I figure if some stranger helped her when she needed it, least I can do is return the favor." It was a simple answer, but it told her more about Owen Zimmerman than 1,000 words might have. She moved to help him, though her frozen fingers made her clumsy. Together, they created something like a nest in the hay, a small space that would hold what little warmth they could generate. "Tell me about yourself," Owen said as they worked. "Besides having brothers who are cattle thieves and murderers in the making, Despite everything, she almost smiled. Not much to tell. Grew up on the ranch outside town. My mother died when I was 14 and my father followed her 2 years later. Hart just gave out one day. Left the ranch to James since he was oldest and the rest of us just stayed on. I help with the books, the cooking, keeping things running. She paused. Or I did anyway. I suppose I do not have a home anymore. You have skills then. Reading, writing, numbers. My mother insisted on it. She taught school before she married, made sure all of us could read and cipher properly. That is good. That is real good. Owen settled into the hay nest, gesturing for her to sit beside him. Means you have options. Could work in a mercantile or teach school yourself or keep books for a business. You are not helpless. She had not thought of it that way, had been too focused on the immediate terror of running for her life. But he was right. She had skills that could earn her a living if she could just survive long enough to use them. She sat down next to him, and he pulled some of the hay over them like a blanket. This is going to be a long, cold night, he said, but we will make it through. Then tomorrow, soon as the storm clears enough, we head for town and go straight to the sheriff. What if he does not believe me? James is well liked in Wood River. People think he is an upstanding citizen. He will believe both of us, and he will definitely believe Mr. Connolly when he confirms the cattle are his. Your brothers are done, Marissa. They just do not know it yet. She wanted to feel relief at those words, but all she felt was a bone-deep weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. Everything she had known, everyone she had trusted, had turned out to be a lie. Her home was gone, her family had become her enemies, and her future was a blank space filled with uncertainty. Hey. Owen's voice was soft. You are safe right now. That is enough for tonight. Tomorrow we will worry about tomorrow. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They sat in silence as the light faded outside, the storm showing no signs of letting up. The cold was brutal, seeping through the walls and floor, and she found herself pressing closer to Owen's warmth without quite meaning to. He did not seem to mind, shifting to make room for her, his arm coming around her shoulders in a gesture that was protective rather than presumptuous. Tell me about the Connolly Ranch, she said after a while, needing something to focus on besides the cold and fear. It is a good place. Mr. Connolly is fair, pays decent wages, does not work his men to death. I have been there 3 years now, worked my way up to foreman last spring. We run about 2,000 head of cattle, have maybe 20 men working full-time. It is hard work, but honest work. There was pride in his voice. I have been saving my wages, planning to buy some land of my own someday, maybe start my own small operation. That sounds like a good dream. What about you? What did you dream about before all this? No one had ever asked her that before. Marissa thought about it, trying to remember the girl she had been just that morning, before the world had turned upside down. I wanted to see somewhere besides Wood River. Denver, maybe, or even further east. I wanted to see what the rest of the world looked like. Stupid, probably. Not stupid at all. Perfectly natural to want more than the same stretch of prairie day after day. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe you will still get to. Once this is settled, you could go anywhere you want. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She had never been more than 20 miles from where she was born, had never imagined she could just leave and start over somewhere else. But now she had no choice. Even if her brothers were arrested, she could not stay in Wood River. The scandal alone would make her life unbearable, and there would always be people who took their side, who believed their lies over her truth. I am scared, she admitted quietly. I know. I would be scared too in your position. But you are brave, Marissa. You chose to do the right thing even knowing what it would cost you. That takes real courage. It does not feel brave. It feels like I ruined everything. You did not ruin anything. Your brothers did that all on their own. You just refused to be part of it. His words settled something in her chest, a knot she had not realized was there loosening slightly. They fell into silence again, and she let herself relax against him, borrowing his warmth and his strength. Outside, the storm raged on, but here in this small space they had created, she felt almost safe. She must have dozed off at some point because she woke to the sound of Owen's voice, low and urgent. Someone is coming. Fear jolted through her, and she was instantly alert. It was fully dark now, only the faint glow of snow through the gaps in the walls providing any light. She could hear it now, too, the sound of a horse approaching, the jingle of tack cutting through the wind. "Stay here," Owen said, getting to his feet. His hand went to his revolver, and she saw him check the chambers with quick efficiency. "If shooting starts, you get down in that cellar and you do not come out until I tell you to. Understand?" She nodded, her heart hammering against her ribs. Owen moved toward the door, positioning himself to the side where he would not be immediately visible to anyone entering. The horse stopped outside, and they heard the sound of someone dismounting. "Hello in the barn." The voice was male, older, unfamiliar to Marissa. "I am coming in out of the cold. I am armed, but I mean no harm to anyone just looking for shelter." Owen relaxed slightly but did not move away from the wall. "Come ahead, but keep your hands where I can see them." The door opened, and a man stepped inside, snow-covered and clearly exhausted. He was in his 50s, Marissa guessed, with a weathered face and the bearing of someone used to authority. He stopped when he saw Owen's gun. "Easy there, son. I am Sheriff Daniels from Wood River. Who are you?" Owen did not lower his weapon. "How do I know you are really the sheriff?" The man slowly reached into his coat and pulled out a badge, holding it where the faint light could catch it. "This satisfy you?" "It is him," Marissa said, stepping out of the shadows. "I know him." The sheriff's eyes widened when he saw her. "Marissa Sullivan. Your brothers have half the town out looking for you, girl. They said you were lost in the storm." "They lied," Owen said flatly, finally lowering his gun. "They were hunting her. I heard them myself, heard the threats they made." "That is a serious accusation." The sheriff looked between them, assessing. "It is the truth," Marissa said. "They are running a cattle theft operation, Sheriff. Stolen stock from the Connolly Ranch and probably others. I found the evidence and they tried to kill me to keep me quiet." Daniels was quiet for a long moment, and she saw him processing this information, weighing it against what he knew of her brothers. "The Connolly Ranch, you say?" "I work for Connolly," Owen added. "Owen Zimmerman, foreman. We have been missing cattle for months." If what Marissa says is true, it fits with what we have been seeing. "Where is this evidence?" "Hidden on our property. I can take you to it once the storm clears. Altered brands, bills of sale with forged signatures, records of sales to buyers out of state." "James kept everything in a lockbox in the barn. He did not know I knew where he hid the key." The sheriff moved deeper into the barn, brushing snow from his coat. "I came out looking for you myself when the storm got bad. Your brothers claimed you ran off half crazy, but something about the way they told it did not sit right with me. Then I ran into the search party they had organized, and I saw how armed they were. Nobody needs that much firepower to find a lost girl unless they are planning to make sure she stays lost." He looked at Marissa with something like regret. "I should have seen it sooner, should have paid more attention to the signs." "You see it now," Owen said. "That is what matters." "True enough." Daniels settled against the wall with a tired sigh. "We are all stuck here until this storm breaks. Soon as it does, we ride for town together and we do this proper. Legal. I will get a warrant for your family's property and we will find that evidence. If it is there like you say, your brothers will answer for it." Marissa felt something in her chest unwind, the tight band of fear loosening just slightly. The sheriff believed her. She was not alone in this anymore. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Do not thank me yet. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. Your brothers are not going to go quietly, and there will be folks in town who take their side no matter what the evidence says. You are going to need to be strong, Marissa." "She is strong," Owen said before she could respond. "She made it this far, did not she?" The sheriff smiled slightly. "That she did." He looked at Owen with open curiosity. "You put yourself in considerable danger for someone you do not know, Zimmerman. That is either very noble or very foolish." "Maybe both," Owen admitted. "But it was the right thing to do." They settled in to wait out the storm, the three of them arranging themselves in the hay nest that Owen and Marissa had built earlier. It was crowded now, but the extra body heat was welcome as the temperature continued to drop. The sheriff filled them in on what had been happening in town, how James had organized a search party and sent men out in multiple directions, all while claiming to be a concerned brother desperate to find his lost sister. "He is smart," Daniel said. "Always has been. If you had not made it to shelter and someone had found your body tomorrow, it would have looked like a tragic accident. Girl lost in a blizzard, frozen to death. Nobody would have questioned it." "But I did make it to shelter," Marissa said. "And now everyone will know the truth." The night stretched on, endless and cold. They talked in fits and starts, sharing bits of their lives to pass the time. The sheriff had been in Wood River for 10 years, had a wife and 3 grown children. Owen told them about growing up in Kansas, about coming to Nebraska looking for work after his parents died. Marissa found herself talking about her mother, about the woman she remembered who had been kind and smart, and determined that her children would have better than she had known. "She would be proud of you," Owen said when she finished. "Standing up like you did, choosing what was right over what was easy." "I hope so," Marissa said softly. Somewhere in the darkest hours of the night, exhaustion finally pulled her under into a fitful sleep. She woke several times, disoriented and frightened, but each time Owen was there, a solid presence beside her, his voice low and reassuring. By the time gray light began filtering through the gaps in the barn walls, the wind had finally died down to occasional gusts, and the snow had stopped falling. They emerged from the barn into a transformed world, everything buried under 2 feet of fresh powder, the landscape smoothed into gentle curves that hid all the familiar landmarks. The sky was clearing from the west, patches of blue visible between the breaking clouds. The temperature was still brutally cold, but the deadly wind was gone. "We should move quick," the sheriff said, "before your brothers figure out where you are and decide to do something desperate." They mounted up, Marissa riding double behind Owen on his tall bay gelding. The horse moved carefully through the deep snow, following the sheriff's mount as they made their way back toward Wood River. It took them over an hour to cover what should have been a 20-minute ride, but finally, the town came into view, smoke rising from chimneys as people dug themselves out from the storm. The sheriff led them not to his office, but to the Connolly ranch, explaining that they needed Mr. Connolly's testimony about the stolen cattle before they confronted her brothers. The ranch house was a sprawling structure, well-maintained and prosperous-looking, and Mr. Connolly himself came out to meet them, a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Owen explained the situation quickly, and Connolly's expression grew harder with each word. "I knew someone had inside information about our stock movements. Knew it had to be someone local who understood our operation well enough to take cattle without it being immediately obvious." He looked at Marissa with something like sympathy. "That took guts, young lady, standing against your own family." She needs somewhere safe to stay while we sort this out, Owen said. Her brothers are still out there looking for her. She can stay here, Connolly said immediately. My wife will see to it. You are welcome in our home as long as you need, Miss Sullivan. Mrs. Connolly turned out to be a warm, practical woman in her 50s who immediately swept Marissa away for hot food and clean clothes. Marissa found herself in a guest room an hour later, bathed and dressed in borrowed clothing, eating soup that tasted like heaven after the cold night in the barn. Through the window, she could see Owen and the sheriff riding back toward town with Mr. Connolly and several of his ranch hands. They will bring your brothers to justice, Mrs. Connolly said gently. Tom Daniels is a good man, and he will not let them wriggle out of this. I know. But knowing it and feeling safe were two different things. Marissa could not shake the fear that somehow James would find a way out of this, would come for her with revenge in his heart. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Mrs. Connolly kept her busy with small tasks, clearly understanding that she needed distraction. They were baking bread when they heard horses approaching, and Marissa's heart leaped into her throat. But it was Owen who appeared in the kitchen doorway, snow-dusted and tired but whole. It is done, he said. We found the evidence right where you said it would be. Over 100 altered bills of sale, branding irons with the Connolly mark modified, records of sales going back 2 years. The sheriff arrested all 3 of them. They are in jail in Wood River. Marissa felt her knees go weak, and she grabbed the edge of the table for support. All 3. James did not fight. Oh, he tried, but he was outnumbered and he knew it. Your brother Thomas made a run for it, but we tracked him down within a mile. They are done, Marissa. They are going to trial and then they are going to prison. The relief was so intense it was almost painful. She found herself crying without quite meaning to, great heaving sobs that she could not control. Owen crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, and she buried her face against his chest and let herself fall apart. He held her through it, one hand stroking her back, murmuring quiet reassurances that she barely heard but that soothed her anyway. When she finally got herself under control and pulled back, she saw that Mrs. Connolly had discreetly left them alone. I am sorry, Marissa said, embarrassed. I did not mean to break down like that. You have earned the right to break down, Owen said gently. You have been holding yourself together through something that would have destroyed most people. She looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time in daylight, and was struck by what she saw. He had a good face, strong and honest, with gray eyes that held both kindness and steel. There was a thin scar along his jawline that she had not noticed before, and his hands where they rested on her arms were calloused from hard work. He was handsome in a rough, practical way that had nothing to do with polish and everything to do with character. You saved my life, she said softly. I know I already thanked you, but I do not think you understand. You saved my life when you had no reason to, when you did not even know me. I had reason enough. You needed help and I could give it. He hesitated, then added, and I find that I am glad I did. Glad that I met you, even under these circumstances. There was something in his eyes that made her breath catch, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the kitchen hearth. She was suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, of his hand still on her arms, of the way he was looking at her like she was something precious. I am glad too, she admitted. I know that sounds strange given everything, but I am. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility, and then Mrs. Connolly bustled back into the kitchen with perfect timing and they stepped apart, both of them slightly flushed. Over the following days, a pattern emerged. Owen came to the ranch house every evening after his work was done, ostensibly to keep Marissa updated on the legal proceedings, but really, she suspected, just to see her. They would sit in the parlor or walk the cleared paths around the house, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his dreams of having his own land, about the sister back east who was making a life for herself, about the things he had seen and done in his 25 years. She told him about her mother's stories, about learning to read by lamplight, about the dreams she had not quite allowed herself to have. The trial was set for early March, once the circuit judge made it to Wood River. In the meantime, Marissa's brothers sat in jail, and she tried to rebuild something like a life. Mr. Connolly offered her work keeping the ranch books, having heard from Owen about her education and skills. She accepted gratefully, needing both the work and the income. The job came with a small room in the house, a space of her own for the first time in her life. Owen was never far away. He found excuses to check in on her throughout the day, to walk her back to the house after dinner, to bring her little things he thought she might need. A new pair of gloves when he noticed hers were worn, a book of poetry from the mercantile in town, wild flowers when the first brave shoots appeared through the melting snow. They were small gestures, but they meant everything. "He is courting you, you know, Mrs. Connolly said one evening, her tone warm with amusement. "In case you had not noticed." Marissa felt her cheeks heat. "I had noticed, maybe. He is a good man, one of the best Tom has ever hired. Honest, hardworking, decent. You could do a lot worse. I know." And she did know. Owen Zimmerman was everything good that she had not known existed in men after watching her brothers descend into criminality and violence. He was steady and kind and strong in all the ways that mattered. "But I am not sure I am ready for courting. Everything is still so complicated." Life is always complicated, dear. The question is whether you want to face it alone or with someone beside you. The words stayed with Marissa as winter grudgingly gave way to early spring. The trial came, and she testified against her brothers, her voice steady as she laid out the evidence and the threats they had made. James glared at her from the defendant's table with pure hatred, but she did not look away. Owen sat in the front row of the courtroom, his presence a silent support that gave her courage. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Her brothers were sentenced to 10 years in the territorial prison, and when the judge's gavel fell, Marissa felt the last chains of her old life fall away. She walked out of that courtroom with her head high, with Owen at her side, and she did not look back. That evening they walked together along the creek that ran through the Connolly property, the water running high with snowmelt. The air smelled of wet earth and new growth, and somewhere a meadowlark was singing its complicated song. "What will you do now?" Owen asked. "Now that it is all settled?" "I do not know," Marissa admitted. "I still have those dreams of seeing more of the world, but I also have a good job here, good people around me. It is more than I thought I would have a month ago. You could have more if you wanted it." Owen stopped walking, turning to face her. "I know this is probably too soon. I know you have been through hell and you need time to heal. But I would be lying if I said I did not have feelings for you, Marissa. Strong feelings. The kind that make a man start thinking about the future in ways he had not before." Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Owen, let me finish. I am not asking for an answer right now. I am just saying that when you are ready, if you are ever ready, I would like to court you properly. Take you to dances, bring you flowers, see if maybe what we have could be something real and lasting. Because I think it could be, if we give it a chance." She looked at him, at this man who had risked himself for her, who had stood by her through the worst experience of her life, who looked at her like she hung the moon. And she realized that she did not need time to think about it, did not need to wonder or worry or analyze. "I am ready now," she said. "I have been ready. I just did not know if you felt the same way." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. "You mean it." "I mean it." I do not know what the future holds, Owen, but I know I want you in it. I know that when I think about tomorrow, you are part of that picture." He kissed her then, gentle and careful and full of promise, and Marissa felt something in her chest unfurl like spring flowers reaching for the sun. This was what she had been missing, what she had not known to look for. This feeling of being cherished, of being safe not because she was hidden but because she was valued. They were married in June, a simple ceremony in Wood River with the Connollys and half the ranch hands in attendance. Marissa wore a dress that Mrs. Connolly had helped her make, pale blue with tiny buttons down the back, and Owen wore his best suit with a string tie that he kept adjusting nervously. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her in front of everyone, and she did not care who saw the tears streaming down her face. Mr. Connolly gave them a piece of land on the edge of his property as a wedding gift, 160 acres of good grassland with a creek running through it. Owen built them a house that summer, a modest cabin with 2 rooms and a loft, but it was theirs and that made it perfect. Marissa planted a garden and kept chickens, and learned to cook on the iron stove that Owen bought from a family leaving for California. At night, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the prairie, and she would think about how strange life was, how terror and loss could somehow transform into joy. Their first son was born the following spring, a healthy boy with Owen's gray eyes and her dark hair. They named him William after Owen's father, and Owen cried when he held him for the first time, overcome with the reality of being a father. Marissa watched her husband with their baby and felt a contentment so complete it was almost frightening. The years unfolded with a gentleness that she had not known was possible. Their herd grew, starting with cattle that Mr. Connolly sold them at a fair price and expanding as they saved and invested wisely. 2 more children came, daughters this time, born 2 years apart. Sarah and Catherine, with Marissa's dark eyes and Owen's steady temperament. The cabin was expanded into a proper house, with real glass windows and a wood floor and enough room for their growing family. Marissa never saw her brothers again. James and Thomas died in prison, killed in a fight with other inmates when she was 23. Michael survived his sentence and left Nebraska the day he was released, disappearing into the West without looking back. She felt sorrow for the boys they had once been, but she did not mourn the men they had become. Some choices could not be undone. Some paths led only to destruction, and they had chosen their road long before she had chosen hers. Owen's sister came to visit when William was 5. A confident woman with a good job in a Philadelphia bank and stories of a life so different from Marissa's, it seemed almost fictional. The 2 women became fast friends, and Amelia made the trip west every few years, bringing gifts and laughter and reminders that the world was bigger than Nebraska. On their 10th anniversary, Owen took Marissa to Denver for a week, just the 2 of them while the Connollys watched the children. They stayed in a real hotel, ate in restaurants, walked the busy streets of a city that was growing faster than seemed possible. Marissa saw the mountains for the first time, those towering peaks that made her feel small and awed, and she understood that her younger self's dreams of seeing the world had not been foolish at all. "Are you happy?" Owen asked her one evening as they stood on their hotel room balcony, watching the lights of the city spread out below them. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," she said honestly. "When I was running through that blizzard 10 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I had lost everything, but really I had just lost the things that were holding me back from finding what I was meant to have. Which is what? You, our family, a life built on something real and true and good." She leaned into him, his arm coming around her automatically. I would not change a single thing, Owen, not even the hard parts, because they all led me to this moment, to you. He kissed the top of her head and she felt him smile against her hair. I love you, Marissa Zimmerman. I love you too. They returned home to Nebraska, to their ranch and their children and the life they had built together. William was growing tall and serious, already showing signs of the rancher he would become. Sarah was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and racing her pony across the fields. Catherine was the quiet one, the thinker, the child who could lose herself in books for hours. More years passed, each one adding to the foundation of their life together. The ranch prospered, their cattle operation growing until they were running 500 head and employing 6 hands year-round. Owen built a proper barn and bunkhouse, and Marissa expanded her garden until it produced enough vegetables to sell the surplus in town. They sent all 3 children to school, determined that they would have the education to choose their own paths in life. When Marissa was 32, a young woman appeared at their door one spring afternoon, nervous and desperate and obviously running from something. She told a story of an abusive husband, of bruises hidden under long sleeves, of finally working up the courage to leave. Owen and Marissa looked at each other, and in that look was the memory of a blizzard, a barn, and a stranger who had said those 3 crucial words. "You are safe here," Marissa told the woman. "Stay as long as you need to." The woman stayed for 2 months, healing in body and spirit, before moving on to start fresh in Oregon where she had family. But she was not the last. Over the years, other women found their way to the Zimmerman Ranch, sent by whispered recommendations, by a network of people who knew that here was a safe place, a refuge from violence and fear. Owen and Marissa never turned anyone away, never asked for payment or explanation beyond what was freely offered. They simply opened their home and gave what had been given to them so long ago: hope, safety, and the chance to start over. Their children grew and married and had children of their own. William took over the ranch operation when Owen's back began to trouble him in his 50s. Sarah married a doctor and moved to Omaha, but she visited often and always brought her 3 boys to spend summers on the ranch. Catherine became a teacher, taking a position at the Wood River School and eventually becoming its principal, a fierce advocate for education who never married but who poured her considerable energy into shaping young minds. On their 40th anniversary, Owen and Marissa sat on the porch of the house he had built for her so long ago, watching their grandchildren play in the yard. William's oldest daughter was teaching the younger ones to rope a practice post, her patience and skill evident. Sarah's middle son was helping Catherine bring out cake for the celebration. The ranch spread around them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to 4 decades of hard work and partnership. "You ever think about that night?" Owen asked quietly. "The storm, the barn, how different things could have been." "Sometimes," Marissa admitted, "I think about how close I came to dying. How if you had not been there, if you had not been the kind of man who would risk himself for a stranger, I would have frozen in that blizzard or been killed by my brothers. I think about how my entire life, our entire life together, all of this, came down to one moment of choice. You chose to help me when you did not have to. Best choice I ever made," Owen said, reaching for her hand. "Brought me everything worth having." She squeezed his fingers, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that was still there even as his hair turned silver and lines deepened around his eyes. "I used to think about revenge sometimes in those early years, wondered if I should hate my brothers for what they tried to do to me. But I realized that the best revenge was this, building a life so full and rich and good that their attempt to destroy me became nothing but a footnote. They lost everything and I gained the world. "We gained the world," Owen corrected gently. "We gained the world," she agreed. As the sun set over the Nebraska prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, their family gathered around them. Voices rose in laughter and conversation. Children squealed with joy, and somewhere someone started playing a fiddle. It was not a grand life by some standards, not filled with luxury or fame or the excitement of distant cities. But it was theirs, built from honesty and trust, and a love that had started in the darkest of circumstances and grown into something unshakable. Marissa leaned her head on Owen's shoulder and watched her grandchildren dance in the fading light, and she thought about the girl she had been at 19, running through a blizzard with death at her heels. That girl could never have imagined this future, could never have dreamed that the worst night of her life would become the beginning of the best life she could have hoped for. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what? For finding me. For keeping your promise. For saying those words that I needed to hear." Owen smiled, the same warm smile that had captured her heart 4 decades earlier. "They won't find you," he quoted softly, then added, "and they never did. All they found was each other, and that made all the difference." The music swelled, voices joined in song, and as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Marissa felt the truth of those words settle into her bones. She had been found by the right person at the right moment, and that single act of courage and kindness had rippled out across 40 years, creating a life beyond anything she had dared to hope for. She had been saved in that barn during the blizzard, but the real saving had come in all the days after, in building something lasting with a man who saw her worth and chose her every single day. When Owen stood and held out his hand to her, inviting her to dance with him under the stars like they had done at their wedding so many years ago, she took it without hesitation. They moved together to the music, surrounded by the family they had created, on the land they had built together, and Marissa knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The scared girl hiding in the barn was gone, transformed into a woman who had found her strength, her purpose, and her home in the arms of the cowboy who had promised she would be safe, and had spent 4 decades making good on that promise. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the scent of growing things and the promise of tomorrow, and Marissa closed her eyes and let herself be completely, perfectly happy.